Hello and welcome. You are watching News9 Live. I am Ravi Mishra. Let's begin with the latest update stories coming in from the Battle of Gaza. Israeli troops with armored vehicles have carried out limited ground raids on Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. Israeli army radio has described the raid as a relatively large ground incursion. This is the biggest Israeli ground action in the Gaza Strip since Israel began amassing forces outside the enclave ahead of planned full-scale invasion. The Israeli army said its tanks and infantry vehicles struck numerous Hamas terrorist cells, infrastructure and anti-tank missile launch posts. The military action was carried out throughout Wednesday night. The forces exited Gaza and returned to Israel, indicating that this might become a template in future Israeli action in the Gaza Strip. Israeli Defense Forces have made several incursions to probe Hamas positions and gather information about hostages earlier. So it was a limited attack. It can be called initial ground action from Israeli troops, IDF, because as per the Netanyahu, Israel is prepared for its ground action in Gaza, but this indicates that they are showing some strength, doing raids and coming back to their posts. So it was a limited Israeli raid in Gaza, but they have certain objectives about to find out the locations of Hamas terrorists, to get some information about the hostages kept by Hamas. Although there is an international pressure on Netanyahu, on Israeli government to postpone the ground attack, however, Israel is showing some strength to the Hamas by doing this limited exercise or limited raids in the Gaza. So let's listen what Netanyahu has to say.
We are raining hellfire on Hamas. We've already killed thousands of terrorists, and this is only the beginning. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many. I will also not elaborate on the various calculations we're making, which the public is mostly unaware of, and that is how things should be.
So Netanyahu has repeated again and again that Israel is totally ready, IDF is totally ready for a full-scale ground operation, but they are doing it in a limited way to show the strength as well as get some initial idea about the hideouts of Hamas and get some valuable information about the strategy of Hamas. However, US has always instructed Israel to keep this ground operation limited and slow so that they can get their hostages free. Let's listen in what Biden has to say.
Hello, folks. Israel has the right, and I would add responsibility, to respond to the slaughter of their people. And we will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That's a guarantee. We also have to remember that Hamas does not represent, let me say it again, Hamas does not represent the vast majority of the Palestinian people on the Gaza Strip or anywhere else. Hamas is hiding behind Palestinian civilians, and is despicable and, not surprisingly, cowardly as well. Mr. Prime Minister, today there's no going back to the status quo as it stood on October the 6th. That means ensuring Hamas can no longer terrorize Israel and use Palestinian civilians as human shields. It also means that when this crisis is over, there has to be a vision of what comes next, and in our view, it has to be a two-state solution. It means a concentrated effort from all the parties, Israelis, Palestinians, regional partners, global leaders, to put us on a path toward peace. I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. And we can't leave that work behind. And one more word on this. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, that pouring gasoline on fire is what it's like. This was a deal. The deal was made, and they're attacking Palestinians in places that they're entitled to be. And it has to stop. They have to be held accountable, and it has to stop now. What they say to me is I have no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think not we, the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't happen. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
So Biden made it clear again that Israel has all rights to defend itself. And in that course of action, Israel is doing a limited ground offensive. Let's understand why a limited Israeli ground offensive. Around 220 Israeli hostages are still in Hamas captivity, and Hamas is entrenched in Gaza, can inflict heavy damages. Hezbollah could open another front against Israel. Israel may not have a final exit plan for Gaza. Question mark over political future of current Israeli leadership, that is Netanyahu's government. So people are also looking at Netanyahu's leadership right now because it is unprecedented attack by Hamas on Israel, and Israel has to get its objective, that is ending the existence of Hamas. That has been reiterated by Netanyahu again and again, that this time is the end story of Hamas, and that's why they are preparing at the large level. But there are some limitations, and that the issue of hostages is the biggest challenge before Netanyahu government as well as Biden's leadership, because some American citizens are also trapped in Gaza, and that's why they're looking for a safe passage for all those people who are trapped in Gaza right now. Moving to another story, US President Joe Biden at a joint press conference with Australian PM Anthony Albanese said that one of reasons for Hamas attack on Israel has to be the Indian Middle East Europe economic corridor. President Biden, however, clarified that this was quote-unquote merely his instinct, as he did not have any proof for his claims. He further added that he thinks Hamas wanted to derail the regional progress that's begin made for regional integration of Israel in West Asia. And Biden's statements gains significance as it indicates that the U.S. suspect a larger transnational conspiracy behind the Hamas attack. Israel's war on the Hamas has sharply divided the world, with the countries such as Russia, Iran, and China taking a stand at variance with the U.S. and Europe. The Islamic world has been rallying behind the Palestinian and the Saudi-Israel rapprochement drive seems to be in cold storage now.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. And we can't leave that work behind. And one more word on this. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, that pouring gasoline on fire is what it's like. This was a deal. The deal was made, and they're attacking Palestinians in places that they're entitled to be. And it has to stop. They have to be held accountable, and it has to stop now.
So Biden suspects about a conspiracy. Satellite images have been released showing various locations in North Gaza, comparing areas before and after Israeli airstrike in response to Hamas attack. Images show devastated structures and terrain. You can see that how entire Gaza Strip has been devastated and damaged after the attack. These satellite pictures showing before and after situation of Gaza, before 7th of October and after the attack of Hamas on Israel, and then the reaction from Israel has caused unprecedented and historical damage to Gaza. Now, the situation in Gaza is very critical. People are facing challenges due to low supply of basic things, and as you can see in this satellite picture, before everything was intact, but after the continued bombardment and attack from Israeli Air Force and Israeli Army, situations have changed. Pictures is totally changed. While the Israel-Hamas war is taking place in the West Asia region, it's also showing its impact far across the seas in the United States. Ever since the war broke out on 7th October 2023, the situation in the US for both the Jews and the Muslim communities has been concerning. Anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents, including violent assaults and online harassment, have spiked in US since the Israel-Hamas conflict, according to the two advocacy groups. The Council on American Islamic Relations said it received 774 complaints of Islamophobia and bias against Palestinians and Arabs. Advocacy group Anti-Defamation League said anti-Semitic incidents have increased in the US by 400% since the Israel-Hamas war began. The US Justice Department has said it is monitoring rising threats against Jews and Muslims amid the conflict. President Joe Biden has condemned both anti-Semitic and Islamophobia.
To all the Israel haters and closet anti-Semites whose ugly heads are rearing up on social media, I say that if you were silent last week when children were decapitated and Holocaust survivors were kidnapped, then keep silent this week, please, when Israel takes the steps needed to release the hostages and protect the free world.
Turkish President Erdogan has described Hamas as a liberation group which is waging a battle to protect its land, terming Israel's action in Gaza as quote-unquote savage. Erdogan informed a group of his party MPs that he had decided to cancel his visit to Israel and accused the Israeli government of taking advantage of Turkey's good intentions. Erdogan, however, clarified that he had no problems with the existence of Israel had a state, but had a problem with the Israeli government's policies. The Turkish president also called for the regional actors to stop adding fuel to the fire and their increasing support to Israel. On the other hand, he urged the Muslim countries to work together towards a ceasefire and lasting peace.
Bir terör örgütü değil, topraklarını ve vatandaşlarını koruma mücadelesi veren, evet, bir kurtuluş ve bir mücahitler grubu.
And furthermore, Turkey's President Erdogan strongly criticized Israel's attack on Gaza, describing them as a form of mental illness. He called for an immediate ceasefire. Addressing members of his AK party, Erdogan accused Western power of fraud, stating that nations supporting Israel's right to self-defense should also speak out against the deteriorating humanitarian conditions in Gaza.
Bu sadece parlamentoda değil ha. İsrail'in Gazze'ye yönelik saldırıları hem yapanlar hem onu destekleyenler açısından hem katilliğe hem akıl hastalığına delalet eden bir haldir.
Perhaps this is the first statement from Erdogan, who has supported Hamas and claiming it's as a force which is fighting for the freedom of Palestine. And the Israeli military has once again accused Iran of having ordered the recent attacks by terrorist groups based in Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon. In a televised media briefing, Chief Ministry spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that Iran was providing Hamas with weapons, training, money, and intelligence services. He also accused Iran of promoting an anti-Israel sentiment globally through online messaging campaign. Listen in.
איראן סייעה לחמאס לפני המלחמה במישרין, באימונים, בהספקת אמצעי לחימה, כסף, ידע טכנולוגי. גם ברגעים אלה נמשך הסיוע האיראני לחמאס במודיעין ובהסתה ברשתות ובדרבון בכל העולם בהסתה כנגד מדינת ישראל. במזרח התיכון שהשלוחים, הפרוקסי, כפי שהם מכונים על ידי איראן, פועלים מעיראק, תימן ולבנון, ההנחיות מגיעות רק ממקום אחד, מאיראן. מי שמערער את המזרח התיכון עבור מעשי חמאס דאעש הנפשעים, שלא יתחבא.
So Israel has accused Iran again for the entire episode of war. The UN ambassador for Iran, Amir Saeed Iravani, said that the secretary of the US had attempted to wrongly blame Iran for Israel-Hamas conflict. He also said that the US had further intensified the conflict by overtly aligning itself with Israel at the expense of Palestinians.
Today, the U.S. Secretary of State once again attempted to wrongly place the blame on Iran. Iran categorically rejects these groundless allegations. Our commitment to the regional peace and stability remains unwavering. Iran aligned with the international community in endorsing the call for an immediate ceasefire and a cessation of Israeli relentless military aggression, as well as imperative to halt the forced displacement of over 1 million people from Gaza. The United States' unwavering support for the occupation and aggression has rendered it an active part of the problem. The U.S. has further exacerbated the conflict by overtly aligning itself with the aggressor at the expense of the innocent Palestinian population. The rapid provision of military and logistical support to the oppressive occupying regime thus made the U.S. complicit in the brutal massacre of innocent Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Mr. President, it is regrettable that today at this chamber the United States, Canada, and certain Western states attempt to shift the blame from the wrongdoer to the victim. They equate the self-defense and right of self-determination of Palestinian people with terrorism, attempting to grant the occupying regime Israel an unjust right to self-defense.
So blame game is going on between pro and anti-Hamas countries. And the story from Lebanon, resident of southern Lebanon, which is heartland of Hezbollah, are in dread of Israeli strike. This reminds them the havoc created by Israeli strike that killed over 100 people in 1996 and dozens in an airstrike in 2006. They are fearful that if the conflict escalates, they might not be able to escape. Have a look at the report.
This rusted-out tank is Israeli, a relic from when Israel occupied parts of southern Lebanon back in 1996. That was a different conflict to the one fought today between Israel and Islamist militants. But this town, called Kana in Lebanon, is the heartland of one of those combatants, Israel's sworn enemy, Hezbollah. Many world leaders have expressed fear that the current war will expand into other countries. Some people in Kana believe that's not only inevitable, that they're used to it and might not be able to escape this time. This was smoke rising from the border Tuesday. Rabab Yusuf lost her daughter in an Israeli airstrike in 2006. She says every now and then they create a war and you lose a family member. You give birth and you don't know if the child will stay with you.
What really impacted me was an interview with a Palestinian child, where the journalist asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" They said, "In Palestine, we do not grow up. They kill us. If we're walking to school, they kill us." Where are these children's rights that people around the world demand? I don't understand. Our only mistake is that we remained on our land. That's our only mistake. It's a mistake because we chose to protect our land, just like any other person living on their land in another country, in Europe or America.
Kana claims to be where Jesus performed his miracle of turning water into wine in the Christian Bible. It's also a stronghold for Hezbollah, which is both an armed faction and political force in the country. The crossfire has had devastating results in the past. The airstrike in 2006 that took Yusuf's daughter killed 28 people, half of them children. Israel said at the time it was a mistake. An artillery strike in '96 hit a UN peacekeeping base here, killing over 100 people sheltering there, most of those women and children. Israel voiced regret at that incident, which prompted it to wind down that operation. Jamil Salameh survived the UN base and is now a security guard at the monument to it, a constant reminder of the collateral damage in war. He's saying, these are mass graves. We know their names, but we don't have their bodies.
Let's move to some other stories. Speaking at the opening ceremony of Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO gathering in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar emphasized the need for stronger collaboration within the SCO. He stressed that it becomes essential given the current global challenges, including the looming economic recession, disrupted supply chains and concerns about food and energy security. He further expressed India's eagerness to work alongside other member states to create sustainable, mutually beneficial and financially viable solutions to all these challenges. Delhiites got a sigh of relief for just one day as the air quality in national capital deteriorating again on Thursday as the overall AQI in Delhi stands at 256 in the poor category as per SAFAR India. However, to mitigate pollution, water was sprinkled through an anti-smog gun in Anand Vihar. My colleague Vivek Sharma is reporting from Delhi's India Gate, bringing in the latest update. Have a look.
राजधानी दिल्ली में प्रदूषण का स्तर एक बार फिर बढ़ता चला जा रहा है। बुधवार की सुबह जहां प्रदूषण का स्तर PM 2.5 190 दिखा रहा था, तो वहीं गुरुवार की सुबह यह आंकड़ा बढ़कर 200 का पार कर चुका है। इस वक्त हम मौजूद है कर्तव्य पथ पर और जहां मौजूद है वहां से कुछ दिनों पहले इंडिया गेट पूरी तरह से साफ नजर आया करता था, लेकिन आप तस्वीरों में देख सकते हैं कि इस वक्त इंडिया गेट मानो स्मोक की चादर से घिरा हुआ हो। स्मोक की चादर ने इंडिया गेट को मानो ढका हुआ हो। अगर हम पूरे दिल्ली की बात करें तो पूरी दिल्ली में जो एयर क्वालिटी इंडेक्स है PM 2.5 वो फिलहाल यहाँ पर 256 दिखा रहा है, यानी कि खराब स्थिति जो है वो दिखाई जा रही है। इसके अलावा दिल्ली के अन्य इलाकों की अगर हम बात करें तो पूसा रोड की तरफ की बात करें तो आप देख सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो 221 दिखा रहा है। इसके साथ ही अगर हम लोग आगे की तरफ चलें तो रोधी रोड पर जो PM 2.5 है उसकी स्थिति 225 यानी खराब श्रेणी दिखा रही है। उसके अलावा अगर हम लोग दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी की बात कर लें तो यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है उसका आंकड़ा 300 को पार कर चुका है और 316 यहाँ पर जो है स्थिति दिखा रहा है, जो कि बेहद ही खराब श्रेणी में दिखाई जा रही है। इसके साथ ही अगर हम एयरपोर्ट की तरफ चलें तो आप देख सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो 283 दिखा रहा है। इसके साथ ही अगर हम लोग यहाँ धीरपुर की तरफ चलें तो आप देखेंगे कि यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो भी 300 का आंकड़ा पार कर चुका है। यहाँ पर 307 PM 2.5 दिखा रहा है। इसके अलावा आयानगर की हम बात करें तो आप देखेंगे कि यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो 208 दिखा रहा है। अगर हम लोग दिल्ली NCR की बात करें तो नोएडा में आप देख सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो 270 के आसपास दिखा रहा है। इसके अलावा अगर हम गुरुग्राम की बात करें तो यहाँ पर जो स्थिति है वो थोड़ी ठीक दिखा रही है। यहाँ पर जो PM 2.5 है वो 176 दिखा रहा है। तो इस तरह की स्थिति जो है दिल्ली NCR में देखने को मिल रही है। जो दिल्ली की बात करें तो दिल्ली जो है पूरी दिल्ली में खराब श्रेणी दिखा रहा है। डॉक्टर जो है वो सलाह दे रहे हैं कि बुजुर्ग और बच्चे जो है वो अपना खासा ध्यान रखें और साथ ही दिल की और साथ ही सांस की बीमारी से ग्रसित जो लोग हैं वो मॉर्निंग वॉक के लिए ना निकलें, जरूरत पड़ने पर ही घर से बाहर निकलें। डॉक्टर सावधानी बरतने की सलाह दे रहे हैं। फिलहाल की बात की जो स्थिति जो है वो खराब श्रेणी में दिखाई जा रही है।
Now a tragic story from US. On Wednesday night, US news media covered a tragic incident in Houston where nearly 20 people lost their lives in mass shooting. Authorities have identified a person of interest who remains at large, armed and considered dangerous. They have issued a warning for residents to stay safe and shelter in place. Take a look at this report.
A mass shooting left multiple people dead in the city of Lewiston, Maine on Wednesday evening, about 35 miles north of the state's largest city, Portland. Eyewitness video from one location showed people running away and ambulances arriving. Authorities said the shootings took place shortly before 7 p.m. local time at a bar and a bowling alley. And as of midnight, the gunman was still on the run. In a news briefing, the state's Public Safety Commissioner Mike Sorschuk identified a person of interest, but stopped short of calling the man a suspect.
Police are currently searching for a Robert R. Card, 4/4 of 1983 of Bowdoin. Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes.
Sorschuk declined to give further details about Card, but officials released more pictures of the man and warned people not to approach him. Authorities urged those in Lewiston to shelter in place, as well as the town of Lisbon between Lewiston and Bowdoin, after finding a vehicle of interest there. Central Maine Medical Center in Lewiston issued a statement saying it was reacting to a mass casualty mass shooter event and coordinating with area hospitals to take patients. The White House said President Joe Biden spoke with Maine Governor Janet Mills by phone and offered full federal support in what he called a horrific attack.
So, US is dealing with the ugly aspect of gun culture in the society again. And Republicans are struggling to choose a new leader. Mike Johnson from Louisiana is the fourth person they have nominated as Speaker, but past attempts failed due to lack of support. Have a look at the report.
US House Republicans picked Mike Johnson from Louisiana as what is now their fourth Speaker nominee late Tuesday to fill up the leadership vacuum that has paralyzed the chamber for 3 weeks. The previous 3 Speaker bids failed to gain enough support. Johnson told reporters he hoped to change that and get congressional action rolling.
We're going to serve the people of this country. We're going to restore their faith in this Congress, this institution of government. America is the last best hope of man on the earth.
With 3 Speaker bids already rejected by Republicans, it's not clear whether Johnson, a conservative constitutional law attorney, can overcome party divisions and avoid falling victim to GOP infighting. Tom Emmer only lasted hours. withdrawing his nomination after receiving it earlier on Tuesday. Emmer failed to attract enough support and win the 217 votes the Republican Party needs to win the Speaker's gavel. A small group of holdouts denied him victory, like Representative Jim Jordan and No. 2 House Republican Steve Scalise before him. Republicans have been unable to settle on a leader since a small faction from their party ousted incumbent Kevin McCarthy early this month, after he brokered a deal with Democrats to head off a government shutdown. It's led lawmakers unable to respond to wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine, and a looming government shutdown deadline in mid-November. In total, 14 Republicans have put their names forward for Speaker this month. Democrats have said they are open to a compromise candidate who would allow the chamber to function, though many Republicans have said on principle that they would not back somebody who had support from the opposition party.
Story about Meta. Dozens of US states on Tuesday filed lawsuits against Meta platforms and its Instagram unit, accusing them of fueling a youth mental health crisis by internationally making their social media platform addictive. Here is the report.
Dozens of US states are suing Instagram and its parent company Meta, accusing them of fueling a mental health crisis among young people with their addictive social media platforms. In one of the lawsuits, the attorneys general of 33 states filed a joint complaint in the Oakland, California federal court on Tuesday, including New Jersey's Matt Platkin.
I'm joining dozens of other attorneys general across the United States in a massive undertaking to once and for all hold Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and its CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, accountable for the deceptive practices and years of harm they have brought upon our young people.
According to the court filing, they are accusing Meta of repeatedly misleading the public about the dangers of its platforms and knowingly inducing children and teenagers into compulsive social media use to, quote, maximize its financial gains.
There needs to be more transparency.
Much of the lawsuit stems from a whistleblower's release of documents in 2021 that showed the company knew Instagram, which began as a photo-sharing app, was addictive. And it points to research that has linked children's use of Meta social media platforms with depression, anxiety, insomnia, interference with education and daily life, and many other negative outcomes. Meta said in a statement it was disappointed that the states chose to sue, quote, instead of working productively with companies across the industry to create clear, age-appropriate standards for the many apps teens use. 8 other U.S. states and Washington, D.C. filed similar lawsuits against Meta in other courts on Tuesday. That means, in total, 42 jurisdictions are taking action against the California-based company. Meta could face civil penalties of up to $50,000 for each violation of various state laws. It's an amount that could add up quickly, given the millions of children and teenagers who use Instagram.
Moving to the next story. Oregon State Court said that the off-duty pilot who had tried to cut the engine power off an Air Alaska jet mid-flight over the weekend had taken psychedelic mushroom 2 days before boarding and hadn't slept for 40 hours. The pilot pleaded not guilty to state charges through his attorney. Take a look on the report.
Court documents say an off-duty pilot who tried to cut the engine power of an Air Alaska jet mid-flight over the weekend had taken psychedelic mushrooms 2 days before boarding and hadn't slept for 40 hours. That pilot, Joseph David Emerson, appeared in Oregon State Court for the first time on Tuesday. He pleaded not guilty to state charges through his attorney. They included 83 counts of attempted murder, 1 for every crew member and passenger on the plane besides himself, and a single count of endangering the aircraft, which was bound for San Francisco Sunday before it was diverted to Portland, Oregon. The flight crew told investigators that Emerson, who was sitting in a jump seat in the cockpit, tried to grab the fire suppression handles, and that he came close to shutting down hydraulic operation and fuel to both engines of the plane, and was seconds away from turning it into a glider. Federal prosecutors said that after the cockpit incident, Emerson, in wrist restraints, tried to grab the handle of an emergency exit during the flight's descent, but was stopped by a flight attendant. A court document later said Emerson told police he'd been depressed for the past 6 months. He'd taken magic mushrooms for the first time and believed he was having a nervous breakdown. Medical research has shown that psilocybin, a naturally occurring hallucinogen found in certain mushroom varieties, commonly called magic mushrooms, to be beneficial as a treatment for anxiety, depression, and other mental disorders. Oregon is the first U.S. state to decriminalize psilocybin. Since 2020, it has legalized supervised therapeutic use for adults at least 21 years old. However, psilocybin remains strictly prohibited under federal law.
And California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM's self-driving car company Cruise on Tuesday, ordering its robotaxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed an unreasonable risk to the public safety. That's according to a statement from the state's DMV that said Cruise had misrepresented information related to the safety of its autonomous technology. The suspension, effective immediately, is a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles. Here's the full report.
California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM's self-driving car company Cruise on Tuesday, ordering its robotaxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed a, quote, unreasonable risk to public safety. That's according to a statement from the state's DMV that said Cruise had misrepresented information related to the safety of its autonomous technology. The suspension, effective immediately, is a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles. Cruise said the DMV reviewed an incident on October 2nd when one of its self-driving vehicles was putting on the brakes but did not avoid striking a pedestrian who had previously been struck by a hit-and-run driver. Cruise said that in that incident, a human driver, quote, tragically struck and propelled the pedestrian into the path of the autonomous vehicle, which struck the pedestrian. GM CEO Mary Barra, who has previously said Cruise represents a giant growth opportunity, said its robotaxis have better safety records than human drivers. Shares of GM ended more than 2% lower on Tuesday.
And Ford has reached a tentative deal with the United Auto Workers Union to put an end to the strikes taking place at its factories. This deal encompasses a fresh 4.5-year contract, bringing about a 25% increase in wages during the period. Take a look at this report.
Ford has struck a tentative deal with the United Auto Workers Union to end strikes at its factories. The agreement covers a new 4.5-year contract, with wages to rise 25% over that time. Including cost of living adjustments and other factors, total pay will actually rise by a third over the period of the contract. The lowest paid temporary workers will get raises of more than 150%. UAW boss Sean Fain confirmed the news in a statement on Facebook.
We told Ford to pony up, and they did. We won things nobody thought was possible. Since the strike began, Ford put 50% more on the table than when we walked out. This agreement sets us on a new path to make things right at Ford, at the Big Three, and across the auto industry.
The deal could end a 6-week stoppage at the company's factories, but first has to be ratified by union members. However, the UAW has said striking workers should go back to work even before a vote takes place. Ford confirmed the news, saying it was pleased to have reached agreement. Now the focus turns to General Motors and Chrysler parent Stellantis, which also face strikes. In statements, both said they were working to reach deals as soon as possible. Analysts bet the Ford settlement will now set a template, with existing offers from GM and Stellantis not that far removed. Automakers are desperate to end the strike, which some estimates say has already cost the industry $9.3 billion.
And Eurozone business activity took a surprise turn for the worse this month as demand fell in a broad-based downturn across the region, a survey showed, suggesting the bloc may slip into recession. Have a look at the report.
Eurozone business activity showed signs of flagging, and that could have the region sliding towards recession. Tuesday saw release of the October Purchasing Managers' Indexes for the bloc. The closely watched gauge of business health dropped to 46.5. That's the lowest in almost 3 years, or over a decade if you ignore the period of the global health crisis. It's also well below the 50-point mark that separates growth from contraction. The details of the October figures made even grimmer reading. A sub-index for the region's key service sector sank below all forecasts. One economist told Reuters that the numbers indicate hiring is all but frozen in the sector, while manufacturers are actually ramping up plans to shed jobs. Forward-looking indexes also sank, with numbers on new business and future output both declining. Put it all together, and some market watchers say it would be no surprise to see the Eurozone enter recession in the second half of the year. For now, though, that isn't quite the consensus view. A Reuters survey of economists predicts growth will flatline, but not fall, over the current quarter.
AI has affected big tech differently. Microsoft, which heavily invested in AI, saw its profits soar to more than $24 billion in the last quarter. Analysts were impressed. On the other hand, Google's parent company Alphabet also did not do well. Here is the report.
AI is proving to be a mixed blessing for big tech. Nearly a year after the launch of ChatGPT, Microsoft is enjoying a boom. Analysts say it's benefited from aggressive investment in the technology, which includes backing the chatbot's maker, OpenAI. The tech titan has embedded artificial intelligence across its products, from its Office software to its search engine Bing. Numbers out Tuesday showed revenue soaring to more than $24 billion at its cloud unit over the latest quarter. That beat analyst forecasts, with one calling the numbers absolutely phenomenal. Microsoft also topped estimates for overall revenue, which rose to more than $56 billion. But it was a different story over at Google parent Alphabet. Cloud revenue there rose by around a fifth to just over $8.4 billion. That was its slowest pace of growth in at least 11 quarters and lagged Wall Street estimates. The search giant did, however, beat estimates on profit and sales, but that didn't satisfy investors, who worry it's now lagging on AI and cloud services. Alphabet shares dropped as much as 7% in US after-hours trade, while Microsoft jumped as much as 5%.
And moving on, let me tell you something about art and artificial intelligence. A Canadian artist is experimenting with AI to create art. Let's see, how is the fusion working out?
Rapidly emerging technology under the umbrella term AI seems to be changing a number of fields, from transportation to brain surgery. Proponents say it could make our lives safer or more efficient. But what about the arts, where working faster or better isn't always the point, and where an artist's greatest asset is often their uniquely human touch? Artist and researcher Songwen Chung believes that there is room for innovation in the studio as well. She says she's pushing the boundaries of creative work alongside AI.
I've worked with computer vision and public cameras to think about ways drawing can expand and how the mark made by hand can shape and be shaped by the mark made by machine.
Chung was born in Hong Kong and brought up in Toronto by an opera-singing father and a mother who programmed computers. Now she collaborates with a variety of painting robots, sometimes in front of live audiences. The artwork they create together can sell for as much as tens of thousands of pounds. The machines are named DUG, Drawing Operations Unit Generation. They study the artist's hand-drawn gestures and synchronously draw along.
What I love about the project is it's not really one of control or repetition or sequencing. There is an overhead camera in the work that reads my gestures in space when I'm making the work. There's a neural network that drives, in one of the generations, there's a neural network that's trained on 2 decades of my own drawing data that responds to the mark I make on the canvas. It really creates an embodied linkage between myself and the robotic system that isn't pre-sequenced, that isn't sort of pre-controlled, and I think in that way we're able, the system, the robotic units, myself, are able to respond in order to make an image. So it's I like to think of it as a kind of embodied AI system that reads myself in the space as one of the prime collaborators.
By taking robotic arms, typically associated with manufacturing of cars or microchips, and repurposing them in a creative space, Chung says she aims to challenge people's ideas about the limits of robotics and AI.
Obviously, the arm is quite interesting, as I think it has a presence in culture as an icon of industrial automation, and I'm repurposing that iconography in a way, that motif, for being a presence that is collaborative and improvisational and meant for making artworks.
Chung is regarded as a pioneer of human and machine collaboration and has been showcased around the world. She was named as one of the 100 most influential people in AI on the inaugural Time 100 AI list for 2023 under the Innovator category.
So man and the machine, art and the AI. That's all for now. Keep watching News9 Live. Hello everyone.